www.greatdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Well, here we are, the middle of March. I'm wondering about the people that set New Year's Eve resolutions. So in a couple weeks, it'll be the end of March, so the first quarter will be over. About 80% of people that set New Year's Eve resolutions on December 31st, a couple weeks into it, they pretty much have forgotten about it. And I always say it's easy to get focused, right? It's easy to get focused on something. The real magic is being able to get focused and to stay focused. What is it about the small minority of people that are able to do that? How do they do it? I firmly believe that they know what's important to them. Like, they're really clear, crystal clear, like a diamond. That's the first thing. And they use their mind. They use their imagination by what they see, what they feel, and what they hear to bring it about, and they take action. So today, we're going to talk about outcome, having a clear outcome, which is really important. A couple weeks ago, we talked about the D in diamond, which is decide where you are. You got to check in, figure out where you're at. We also talked about figuring out what is important and aiming and having your mind focused on what is important to you. So today we're going to talk about the O in diamond. And the O stands for outcome, having a clear outcome. Now, the reason why it has to be clear is because a lot of times people don't know what they want. That's the first thing. I've asked people for years, so what's important to you? What do you want to do with your life? Do you have a goal? Do you have an outcome? And first of all, most people, I don't really think they think about these things. And I definitely think that a lot of us, including myself, we're on autopilot. Today's Sunday, tomorrow's Monday, it's a new week. We have these routines and patterns like Groundhog Day, which we talked about. But when you ask the average person, hey, what do you want? Like, what do you want out of this week or out of this day or out of this quarter or out of this year, 2023? You'll get a lot of blank looks. People don't really know. I do this lecture called The Importance of Focus, and I ask people before they come into the room or before we start the lecture, what's important to you? And I get these blank looks. It's like, what do you mean? Well, what's really important? I'd like you to write it down. A word, family, love, happiness, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing. Most people don't know what it is. And then if they do, a lot of times it is a vague thing, very vague, meaning it's not specific. So someone will say, well, I just want to be happy. Okay, all right, great. Well, here's the challenge with that. How do you know when you're there? It's so subjective. Or another one would be, I just want to be successful. Okay, great. So let's say you had 5 or 10 people in the room. Picture this. And everyone in the room said they wanted to be happy or they wanted to be successful. Either one, it doesn't matter. And then you would ask every single person along the lines, well, what has to happen for you to be happy? Right? Or what has to happen for you to be successful? Now you're getting into their values and you're getting into their rules, specifically their rules. Well, somebody might say, well, for me to be happy, the sun's got to be out every single day and it's got to be 70 degrees. Okay, all right, I get it. Somebody else might say, well, for me to be happy, I have to have money in the bank. Well, how much money? Well, I have to have so much money. Or you could ask another person, well, what about success? What has to happen for you to be successful or at least feel successful, right? Because these are all subjective things. Well, my rule for success is, I have to have at least $1 million in my piggy bank in the other room or something like that. Or I have to have respect from everyone, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. So when we're thinking about outcomes, these are not necessarily outcomes. Maybe they are, but they're hard to measure is what I'm getting at. They're really hard to measure. Think about Thanksgiving dinner, or think about Christmas, or think about maybe Easter coming up, and you're like, well, I just want to make sure that the family is really happy. that everybody sitting around the table is enjoying themselves. That's my outcome. Okay, that's great. Here's the challenge with it. Number one, you don't necessarily have the control over everyone, right? Some people might not want to feel happy, or something might be going on in their life. So picking something that is outside of your control, like the weather or other people, is kind of a recipe for disaster because you can't control it. It's outside of your control. So number one, it's vague in most cases. You know, I want to make a lot of money. Okay, well, what's a lot of money? You know, if you just want to make an extra $10 this week, is that enough for you? Or do you want to win a lottery ticket and win a lot of money? Like, what is it? So number one, it can't be vague. It can't be vague. And it also has to be something that is within your control. Now, one of the things that I do that really helps me is I will write things down. I'm really focused on putting my thoughts on paper, because when you write it down, you kind of see if it's vague, right? You're able to examine it. You're also able to see if it's in you know, your control. Is this something that you're going to aim towards and make happen, but it depends on other people's feelings or emotions or the weather? So you get to see that when you write it down. So what I tend to do is some of the top goals that I'm working on, I will write them down and I'll fold them up and put them away. And I won't think about it as far as like looking at it. I'll put it away in like a shoebox, right? And then it's not until it becomes a reality that I open up the box and I go, wow, that's kind of cool. I wrote that down and it happened. So what's the opposite? What's the opposite of not knowing or having a vague outcome? Well, it's specific. It's crystal clear. So some examples could be money, because money and health, I think, are great examples because you can measure these things. So let's say someone says, well, this year I want to hit 6 figures, or this year I want to make an extra $10,000 or $20,000, right? So a person could sit down and write this down and then look at it a year from now, and they would know exactly whether they did it or not. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why most people are unclear, because they know that if they're going to get really specific and really clear and they don't get it and it doesn't happen, then they might feel bad. They might feel like, okay, you know, I didn't win here. Something didn't work. But it's only things that are specific that you can really measure. And what gets measured is what you can focus on. I mean, think about it. I mean, if you walk into a room and you think, okay, I just want to make sure people like me, or I want to make sure that people are happy, or I want to make sure that every day is a sunny day and a clear day, and you know, these things are outside of your control. You can't control it, and they're very vague. So things like health, like, okay, let's talk about health. I want my blood pressure to be this, or I want my weight to be this. Even marriage, you know, relationship. I want to be in a happy relationship. Okay, well, what does that look like? So a more specific outcome could be, I want to be married, or I want to be single, or I want to, here's one, I want to go to Ireland this year, I want to go to Scotland next year, I want to go to Israel next year. These are very specific things that you can measure. And you know when you hit them. You know when you reached the target, because it's a real clear outcome. There's nothing's vague about it at all. Nothing's subjective. And on top of it, it's based on what you can do. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, we went out to breakfast, lunch, and I said, so what's the secret to your success? And I won't get into who it was and what we talked about before and after, but they were really clear about it. They said, I focus on what I can control. That's it. I focus on what I control. I don't focus on anything else. I don't control the weather. I don't control other people. I don't control what people are going to say or what they're going to do, right? So where I focus is on my will, what I can control. So if you're in sales, let's say you're in real estate sales. We have a lot of people watching that are into real estate. So you say, well, I want to sell so many more houses this month or this quarter or this year. Last year I did this. This year I want to do that. It's really simple. Or if you're in network marketing, or if you're in any kind of corporate sales, it's the same thing. It's very specific. You sit down with your manager, you look at the numbers, and you say to yourself, okay, this year or this month or this quarter, I want to do something a little different. So numbers are good, health is good, finances are good. Where it gets kind of tricky is when it's vague, really vague, and when it depends on other people, and when you're not really clear on what you want and you can't write it down. So being able to write it down, having a clear outcome is really important. So think about the areas of your life that you have to focus on. One is your health. You got to focus on your health. How you doing? Have you been on the scale? That sort of thing. Or relationships, or money, or currency, what money can buy, your lifestyle, your emotions, which is kind of hard to gauge in a sense. But in addition to that, we also have your career. What are you doing with your life? So these are areas that you can have outcomes in. And if you're clear and you can write them down, you can gauge whether you're moving towards these things or whether you're moving away from these things, which is very clear. Like, I'm a speaker, so I know exactly how many speaking events I did last year. So this year I have a number written down how many I want to do this year. I also know how many, I should say how much money I made last year in the speaking industry. And I also want to, trump that this year. Again, these are really clear outcomes. So let's do this. Let's take a 3-second, well actually it's a 30-second break, and then we'll be right back. Hold tight.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
All right, we're talking about the O in Diamond, which is outcome. So here's an outcome that I might have for you. I would love for you to download my ebook. So you would go to www.gregdwyerebook.com. That's G-R-E-G, my first name. Last name is D as in Diamond, W as in Wealth, Y as in Young, E-R, ebook.com. It's not long. All I ask is that you go there, click the button, download the ebook. I think it's 12 pages, right? And all I ask is that you just simply read it. So let's say that would be an outcome for you that you picked up today, that you'd say, okay, before I go to sleep tonight or before tomorrow morning, I'm going to go to gregdwyerebook.com. I'm going to download this ebook. It's not long. You could probably read it in a few minutes. It's an outline about my morning ritual, a little bit about my background, but most of all, it's about how you can get focused in your life. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult. It's just that I think most people don't have outcomes in life. And if they do, they're very vague. So that's a challenge for you. But it's an outcome that you know whether you did it or not, right? You either downloaded it or not, and you either read it or you didn't. Now, here's an interesting thing. I was talking to someone the other day. People who buy courses online. Maybe they'll buy a course for $200 or $2,000, right? Very few people actually watch the course. Isn't that amazing? Same thing with books. It's like 8% of people that buy an audio program or a digital program or some kind of online course, after they pay their credit card or give their credit card and pay for the course, actually watch it. So a clear outcome would be, okay, I bought this course last year. Maybe you have some courses that you bought, and I'm going to watch it. I am actually going to watch what I purchased. So out of 100 people that buy something online, which is a course, only 8 people actually watch it. Think about that. A clear outcome would be, all right, I'm going to spend some time tonight. I'm going to watch a part of this. And here's another interesting thing. Very few people execute. Execute means, all right, I watched this great class on how to save money, or I watched this great class on how to bake a cake or to cook or to change my health. I'm actually going to implement it. I'm going to follow the steps. I'm going to write down the steps, and I'm literally going to do it. The outcome is clear. I'm going to not only buy the course, right? I'm going to watch the course, but even more than just watching it passively, I'm going to do something about it. It's a small percentage of people. You know, it blows me away that people would spend their hard-earned money to buy something, either a book or a course, and they don't follow through. So a clear outcome is simply to do it, is to take action, and not to take action on something that's vague. It's to take action on something that is really clear, something that is within your power to do. Like, you can go to gregdwyerebook.com. You can download that. You can read that. You can do it. It's a clear outcome. Or maybe going for a walk every day. A clear outcome. I guess it was Jerry Seinfeld that would have this system where he would mark the calendar every single day. So since the beginning of the year, I have not gone and been a customer of Dunkin' Donuts. That was a clear outcome that I had on December 31st of last year. I said, I'm not going to go to Dunkin' Donuts every single day, and I'm not going to purchase a coffee every single day from Dunkin' Donuts. So I got this calendar every single day. I cross off. So it's all of January, done. I think I went maybe once in February. Somebody bought me a bottle of water. No big deal. March, here it is, the 12th. So in a few weeks, it'll be 3 months. And now it becomes a habit. Really, if you think about it, you do something for 66 days or 90 days or 3 months or 6 months. After a while, the thing that you thought was just a dream becomes a habit. You're actually walking every day, or you're actually doing something that you say you're going to do. You have a very clear outcome. So I will tell you, it impacts my health. Somebody saw me the other day. They said, hey, you losing weight? Yeah, I'm losing weight. Well, how much? Well, you know, here's how much. I think I lost 18 pounds. I think the last I got on the scale, it was 18 pounds. It's measurable. It's really clear. And I can also tell you there's more money in my bank account. It's really clear. So when we're talking about outcome, we're looking at something that's very specific that you can control. You can't control everything, but there's certain things you can control, like downloading my ebook, gregdwyerebook.com. Not only downloading it, but reading it. So now we're going to talk about what I bring people through when I coach them. There are some people I coach one-on-one, either on Zoom or in person. And one of the things that I ask them early on in my relationship of coaching them is, what do they want? And there's usually 3 questions that I ask people before I bring them on as a client. The first one's pretty easy, and you can answer this yourself. What is it that you want? That's what I ask people. You know, what do you want? What is the thing that you want? And again, a lot of times people don't know, or they're not being specific enough and it's not clear for them. The second thing I ask them is, what gets in the way? So let's say somebody says, well, I want to be this amount of weight, or I want to be healthy. I want to have this amount of money in my retirement. That's another one that's pretty good, because you can measure it. Okay, great. So you want to have $1 million in the bank, or you want to have $500,000 in the bank, or you want to be within your body weight as far as your height is concerned, right? So it's specific. So the question is, what gets in the way? What's stopping you? What is the thing that's causing you not to follow through? First question, what do you want? Second question is, what stops you? And then the third question, do you want help with that? So once I get somebody that says, yeah, you know what, I really could use you as a coach. You know, I want you to help me with this outcome. I want to talk to so many people per day, per week, per month. I want to speak on so many stages. So you have a coach that keeps you accountable. So here are the questions that I ask people. There's a few questions here. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them. We only have about 10 minutes left. But the first question I ask is, what do you want? And this is once a person comes in and we're doing a coaching relationship for either 3 months or 6 months. What is it that you want, right? So think about your life. Think about areas of your life. And there's not 100, there's not 1,000,000 areas of your life. There's just a few. And we've talked about this before. We talked about health. We talked about relationships. We talked about money and what money can buy. We talked about your emotional health and your mindset. We talked about your career or your passion or your meaning of what you want to do in your life. I don't know. There's probably a few more other things, but you know what I mean. Is the thing that you want specific? That's what I want you to think about. Like, you know, what you're thinking about, is it really clear? Is it very specific? And is it something that you can control? Again, if it's the weather or it depends on other people, you might want to rethink it. So the first question is, what do you want? So maybe right now as you're watching or you're listening to me, you actually write it down on a piece of paper. You know, I want to have $1 million by the time I retire. Okay, or maybe 2 million. Or I want to go to Greece next year, or I want to go to Israel next year, or I want to be, you know, so much pounds, or I want to weigh so many, you know, something like that. That's the first question. The second question is, what will that do? What will that do for you? What will that do for you? In other words, what is the benefit of that? The benefit of you being healthy, the benefit of you having money, the benefit of you being married or being single, or whatever it is. What will that do for you? What is the thing that is going to benefit you? You know, hopefully there's going to be a payoff there, right? So with health, it's obvious. You might live longer. So that's the second question I ask. What will that do for you? So think about that. And I like to think about this emotionally. It's like, all right, if I'm really healthy and I'm waking up and I got a lot of energy and I feel positive and I'm not walking around with a lot of weight, what will that do for me? Or if I have money in the bank or I have a secure retirement, what will that do for me? What will that give me peace of mind? Will it give me a sense of security? A lot of times it's an emotion, right? It's something that emotionally you benefit from. You know, I want to be married. I want to be single. I want to travel. I want to go to Ireland. You know, something like that. What will that do for you? What's the payoff? What's the benefit? That's the second question I ask. The third question I ask is, and this is the reason why we ask this question, because it's got to be specific. How will you know? How will you know when you have it? How will you know? So somebody says, okay, well, you know, I want to, in my side hustle, make an extra $25,000 this year. My side hustle, I want to make an extra $50,000. All right, how will you know? Easy, Greg, easy. It's not a big deal. I'll go to my bank account, I'll go to my Quicken, and I'll see that I put the extra $25,000 in the bank. No big deal, right? Or I'll get on the scale, and instead of being 100 or 280 pounds, I'm 125 pounds, or I'm 225 pounds, or my blood pressure is perfect, you know? How will you know when you get there? Well, I'll be lying on a beach in Mexico. Maybe Mexico's not a good choice. I don't know why I said Mexico, but you know what I mean. When I'm talking about the outcome, it's got to be specific. It can't be vague. And one of the ways that you can test it is, you know, when you have it. And another thing is, if you write it down on a piece of paper and you put it away and someone finds it, let's say you're on vacation and they find it, it's like, okay, I know exactly what this guy wanted. This guy wanted to be married by the end of this year. Okay, wrote it down. By December 31st, 2023, wanted to be married. Wanted to sell so many houses, right? Whatever it is specific, and you know exactly when you have it. All right, here's the other question I ask. When, where, and with whom do you want this thing? Now this kind of gets into, you know, the benefit to others and how it's going to impact other people. You know, I heard a story the other day about a couple that wanted to stop smoking. They wanted to stop smoking. A friend of mine, Doug O'Brien, mentioned this story. And he talked about the fact that, the husband and the wife wanted to stop smoking because they realized that it was ruining their health, right? Maybe it was just one person. I don't think it was both of them. So let's just pick the male. The male wanted to stop smoking. The husband wanted to stop smoking, okay? And so they worked on, a protocol so that he wouldn't reach for a cigarette and he wouldn't smoke and he wouldn't be a smoker. He would identify without being a smoker. And he eventually, after, a period of a couple of sessions, he finally got to the point where he reached his outcome. He got rid of his cigarettes, right? He threw them away, wasn't buying cigarettes anymore. He didn't identify himself as a smoker, had a very clear outcome. It wasn't dependent on his wife. If his wife wanted to smoke, fine, his wife could smoke. But he wasn't going to smoke anymore. He wasn't going to be a smoker. He wasn't going to spend money for cigarettes. And he finally reached his outcome. Congratulations, he did it, right? The question, where, when, and with whom do you want this, allows you to ask the question how it's going to impact you and other people. So this is what happened. Their relationship started to deteriorate. Husband and wife, they've been married, let's just throw it out there, 20 years. I don't know. I don't remember the details. What happened was they would get together at breakfast and have breakfast, and then they would, light up a cigarette outside the house, or this designated place, and they would talk, whether it was in the morning or in the evening. This is how they made a connection. One of the ways they made a connection is they would, light up a cigarette. Both of them, the husband and the wife, would light up a cigarette, and they would smoke, and they would talk, and they would connect over a cigarette. A lot of people, I've seen this at the hospitals. You drive to the hospitals and you can see people outside of the hospital, across the street, out into this designated area. And it's not just smoking a cigarette. It's the tribe. You're with the tribe, and you're connecting with other people. So the reason I ask this question, where, when, and with whom do you want it? You kind of think, how is this going to impact how I relate to other people? How is what I want going to impact my brother, my sister, my employee, the people I work with? That's really important. And he, decided to change his ways. I don't know if he went back to smoking. I don't really remember the story, the full story, but all I do remember is that it impacted his relationship. Sure, he stopped being a smoker, he reached his outcome, but his marriage was a little rocky, so I don't know what they did. Maybe she became a non-smoker. Here's another one. How will this affect other aspects of people in your life? It's very similar to the one that we're just talking about. And then the next question is, what resources that you have? What are some of the resources that you have so that you can achieve this outcome? A lot of times when people think about these things, they think that they don't have the resources. They think, well, how am I going to do this? How is not that important. What really is important is that you are clear about what you want. That's the first thing. And you get a little bit of leverage on yourself so that you're working towards what you want. And if it doesn't work immediately, you don't give up. Like if you say to yourself, I don't want to go to Dunkin' Donuts, I don't want to go to the donut store, or I want to do X, Y, Z, and you fall back and you end up going, or you end up not walking, that's okay. You just get back and you create that chain of events starting anew. But it's really having a clear outcome that is dependent on you, your will, is specific, is not unclear, and it's something you can write down. Like, I want to sell so many houses this year. Okay, I hope I gave you something to think about. It's really important that you don't focus on the things that distract you, because if you do, the things that distract you will keep you from what is important. I'm looking at the time and we're just about out of time. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Great Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer of buildingfortunesradio.com. Check out Greg at greatdwyer.com. Be sure to download his ebook at greatdwyerebook.com to stay focused on what matters most to you. That's www.greatdwyerebook.com. We want to thank you for listening. Now go make a difference in your world.
Make sure you download that ebook, RegDwyer.ebook.com. That's a great outcome. Bye.